Thank you, Mary. As Mary said, I'm going to be your moderator for our investor panel, and we'd like to make this an informal panel, so if you have some questions, I hope you'll be ready to ask them of our panel. But I think, given that Jody's panel was called Design for All, maybe we should call this Money for All. Does that work? So just pick up your check on the way out, and don't worry about this judging thing. So, happy to be here. I first think we ought to give Mary a round of applause for Thank you for a terrific job on this conference. We're actually pretty much on time here, so that's even more amazing. So, first of all, and I know folks are just coming back in from lunch, but how many, either by show of hands, how many entrepreneurs do we have in the audience here? Okay, virtually all. Now, keep your hand raised if you're an entrepreneur looking for funding. Okay, so entrepreneurs, meet our funders here. We're happy to have 5 panelists here, and a combination of independent VCs and corporate VCs. So let me just go down the row, and perhaps you can just say a sentence about yourself as I introduce you. Andy Donner.
It's a delight to be back here. I have one sentence, so that's all I can say. So I'm a director with Physic Ventures, which is based up in San Francisco, and we invest in consumer health. So just by way of background, we have a sick care system, not a healthcare system in our country. So we're investing in primary, secondary prevention, chronic disease management to keep people out of the hospital, or if they go to the hospital, to keep them from returning to the hospital.
Okay, Nancy, you're allowed more than a sentence because clearly Andy had more than a sentence. So.
Hi, I'm Nancy Kamei. I work for Intel Capital, which is the venture capital arm of Intel Corporation. And I work with 80 investors who work to find investments for Intel all over the world. About half of our investments are here in the United States, and about half of them are outside the United States. As a group, we've invested in over 1,100 companies and in 50 countries, so we're truly a global venture capital operation. And I am a healthcare sector specialist, so where there's an investment in the United States, I generally work on that myself, but outside the United States, I collaborate with my partners that live and work in other geographies.
And we're happy to have Robin from Johnson & Johnson.
I'm Robin Sitver. I'm with Johnson & Johnson Consumer Companies, and I'm responsible for business development for the topical healthcare, intimate healthcare, and personal care franchises, many of which have focuses on baby boomer type products. And I think the key point, I've spent over 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry, and the function that I'm in, business development, did not exist when I first started, because it's been over these years that we've learned that we can find the best, the most innovative technologies, the breakthrough technologies, by talking to people like you and finding people like you to invest with.
And Xander from Draper Jurvetson.
Good afternoon. I guess the one sentence is on the screen. So DFJ is a early stage, new technology, venture capital house in the same place as everybody else in Menlo Park. We're generally looking for kind of early adopters. So it's interesting to come here and try and think of businesses where boomers are going to be the early adopters. So I'm hopefully going to cast a more general eye across the business landscape.
And terrific, Jeff from United Healthcare.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff Shoemate, Vice President of Innovation and Business Development. That's almost my sentence there. With United Healthcare, so we're a relatively large insurance company. I actually work for the Medicare and retirement segment, which means that I'm responsible for finding new solutions for boomers, for 50-plus consumers. And on my shopping list are ideas that help improve the system to drive down costs or improve the member experience on the Medicare side, as well as solutions outside of Medicare and insurance around sort of that retirement side of the business. So better ways to serve our members in new and different ways.
Okay, terrific. Well, entrepreneurs, you can see we have a ready and willing investor panel here. just to start it off, to give a little market background, Xander, perhaps you can, well, in the previous conversation, you said this has got to be a huge market. There's too much here. And can you guys give us some perspective compared to other markets that DFJ has looked at or your own personal experience?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about this boomer marketplace?
The amazing thing was when I made that statement, I was just like, it's got to be a huge market, right? And I'm not American, I've got no idea, how many baby boomers there are, but one of our wonderful entrepreneurs actually provided me with a statistic, which was that 66% of America's wealth is in the hands of baby boomers, which, I mean, that's what we're looking for, right? If they've got that much wealth between them, then there has to be a big business there.
And I think we've all talked about this conference, about how big this market is. I think what you expect from this panel, though, is a little back and forth, a little more kind of what are investors thinking about this? And that's what we're going to try to do with our discussion. And I know Andy, he's been on the panel before, is always good for level setting this. And we think it's a big market, but where are the investments? Where are the companies?
Yeah, well, to keep it lively, I'll be, I guess, the token cynic at this moment. That's not really my disposition, but I'll play it. I have been coming here for now 5 years, and it reflects a deep level of interest at Physic and personally in this market size and the trillions of dollars. Here's where the skepticism comes in. To find the investable companies that are approaching this huge market opportunity with amazing entrepreneurs and this is the key, a business model that's here and now where dollars will flow is actually elusively challenging. And it's hard to actually see in the venture business. You like to see patterns where companies have exited. It's really hard to put your finger on businesses that have focused specifically on the boomer market and seen really outstanding venture type returns. There's a lot of passion, there's a lot of dollars that are flowing, and all of us are here to make this happen. It's been hard to find the companies that have that combination of great team, great business model, market, dollars flowing, that are approaching the market right now. Hopefully there'll be, one of them will be in the audience today, but it's not been without its challenges.
But I think that's the challenge to the entrepreneurs in the audience, because there's obviously a lot of money to be made in this sector, but it's going to require some really good analytical skills, thinking about the market, but also probably the thing that we're the best at in the United States of America, which is unleashing our imagination and figuring out how to address the problems of the boomers.
You can also argue that whilst there's increased risk from there not being a track record, and I will completely agree with that. There isn't a business out there which you could say this was a Google or Microsoft or anything we normally look at as a track record. But what you can say is that let's say I was investing in a new company now. Let's say we're investing in a car that runs on fresh air, and I'm saying, right, I think that's going to be the future, and you say, no, I don't think it's going to be. And somewhere there's a probability of that. Whereas the probability of a large portion of the United States population getting older and needing new services is almost 100%. So whilst you've got risk in one place, you've actually got a reduction in risk in the other place.
Yeah, I think Nancy actually said it. I like the way she said it. The boomers, and looking at it as boomers may be the wrong way to look at it. It's about solving problems, consumer problems, and the boomers just make those problems maybe a little bit different and a little bit more acute, but certainly sizable. And so businesses lined up against those problems might not look like a boomer business, but it may be a very successful business. You can kind of look back on the track record of the population coming through the system, and there's a lot of successful business models that feasted on them and their issues and their problems.
So Jeff, maybe I'll put you on the spot a bit, talk about one of those problems that you've seen. You mentioned, I think with health reform that you see coming, that Massachusetts what you've seen in Massachusetts, at least from United Healthcare's perspective, may be kind of Christmas future for what the nation may see. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on Massachusetts, but my sense of what happened there, which may be a forecast of what's going to happen, is that it got harder to get to doctors. Waiting lines went up, and so access became more challenging as everybody got covered. And so that's a problem, and there will need to be solutions put in place to go after that.
Right, and you see that happening a bit now with doctors actually offering their email addresses. I've never seen that happen before. I don't know whether it really goes to the doctor, but at least the idea that I can potentially communicate with my doctor is a new development. So you can get a hint of that here, but it sounds like that's a problem that is already starting to appear in one of the states and potentially could appear in 50 of the states if things develop as they are planned now.
And the hard part, so Massachusetts is leading the country in certain ways, but as an investor, we like to see business plans and business models that are going to scale across the country. And what's hard in healthcare is that there are a lot of things that are regulated state by state. And so when you think about the whole country, you can't think about one zone. You have to think about the regulations in sometimes 50 different zones. So it makes it a little challenging.
And I think one of the keys, it was mentioned even in the earlier session by Lori, that we're not as focused on disease states as we are on insights. And that's really a key for us, is to be focused on the consumer insights. What does the boomer need? And we think the boomer needs, cost containment, accessibility, ease of use, easy to incorporate in routine. And I can think about products, you wouldn't think about them necessarily as a boomer product, but they have major use in the boomer segment. So for example, Rogaine, which is one of our products, it was in a declining state for a long time. And a couple of years ago, we launched a new technology. It was a licensed technology for Rogaine, which is the Rogaine foam. Made it easy to use. It works much better than it used to work. And our sales have been growing double digits since 2007. So it's an incredible way to deliver a promise to this market. And we have got more people, more men who are willing to treat, more people who are repeating use. So it's a good model for what technology does. And what we're focused on at J&J is always the quality of the technology, the patents, the protectability of the technology.
And it is identifying that problem that seems to be the key here. Are there any other sectors that the panel might point to that are looking interesting in terms of as they're applied to the boomer marketplace? Any sectors that tend to dominate? I know out here, for example, generally mobile sector tends to be a somewhat hot area, and social networking, of course. But when we talk about this boomer marketplace, is there an area that overlaps that tends to be an area of interest that either you have invested in or could see some potential in?
I can give you this is another healthcare example, but I worked at Pfizer for 27 years. So I was involved, or I was at Pfizer when they launched Viagra. Well, that is the ultimate baby boomer product. And if you think about it, what did Pfizer do back in those days? This was they made a taboo subject dinner conversation. They were the leader, and this product has sold over $1 billion since every year since around '97. But what they've done is they've created a whole industry around improving sexual performance, improving relationships, and we are looking for products that can do that for women. In fact, they fit under the KY brand. So if you have any, please talk to me.
Okay, and I think it's a great segue to our audience, because clearly the panel's not ready or too much for prime time. But seriously, I think it is great to point to these examples, some that we don't really count as boomer marketplace. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be a boomer product. It has to be a product that helps this segment or part of this segment and makes a lot of money for the entrepreneur, makes a lot of money for the investor, and hopefully helps a lot of people along the way. And so we're not looking for a product that fits completely within the segment, but something that does have that overlap. Are there some questions from the audience that would, questions that you wanted to ask the panelists? Okay, in the back there.
Brian Lancer with Case by Medical, and it seems like consumer goods is a huge investment focus now. I want to know if early stage medical device and early stage biotech, there's still a appetite for that sort of investment opportunity, if you're so aware.
Where there's not too much regulation, which is almost nowhere, as far as I can understand. That's the scary thing about regulation to an investor is it's not a it's not a risk that we can really quantify. We're in the, investing is just like playing poker, you know, I have my hand and I know the probabilities of winning or losing, whereas when it comes to regulation, I know that someone who's probably not a business person, maybe a politician, will make a decision which will either create me millions of dollars of wealth or create me zero. And that's as we can't take a view on that, it's very difficult to know how to bet on that. You know, is it going to take 10 years? Is it going to take too long? Is it never going to happen at all? And so that's, I think, where the pushback is. So, you know, if you can kind of de-risk that and get as much of the regulation out of the way, or see ways that you can avoid being regulated to begin with to get business up and going, and then, you know, when you've got some scale and it can be a side project to attack the riskier stuff, you know, that's perhaps an avenue. But if you're up against people like J&J who've got the capacity to say, right, we're going to have 100 projects and 50 of them will get regulated out of the water, another 25 won't make any money, and then the remaining 25 are the ones we want. So it's definitely a difficult area to be in.
Well, Xander,
I'll take the counterpoint on that.
oh, good, because I know I have a similar view about regulation, but only because we don't understand it as well. I think there are some firms that really understand regulation, whether they be
Right.
venture firms or corporate venture firms.
Go
ahead, Nancy.
So I hear what you're saying, Xander. But as a dedicated healthcare person, I've been in this space many decades now. You can think about regulation as a hurdle, or you can think about it as a competitive advantage. So if you are the medical device that gets the FDA clearance, it does create a barrier around your business that stops other competitors from being able to come in. And in some of the sectors that I've been investing in lately, the FDA hurdle is about this high. The reimbursement hurdle, getting United Healthcare down there at the end of the table to pay for some of those products, that hurdle has become somewhat higher in some cases than the FDA hurdle. So reimbursement has started to become something that we look very closely at during the due diligence phase. And it might be because we are up the learning curve on regulation. But to answer your specific question, definitely there are lots of people still looking at early stage biotech and medical device companies.
I just wanted to I totally agree with that. We understand the regulatory situations, and we have huge capabilities in that area, so it doesn't scare us. So I think the key thing for an entrepreneur is to find a partner that understands it and knows how to navigate through that system, because it can be risky, it can be difficult, but with the right partner, you can definitely get the products to market, and then you get a competitive advantage.
And you just found out whose door to knock on at the end.
And just put a little commercial for Johnson & Johnson, because, Robin, at least you gave the sense to me that you would partner with a smaller company that might just be less than 5 years old and brand new product on the market, first time they've done this, but they have a very clever solution that could fit in with your product line. Is that a fair statement?